Hey guys, got SAAD here. It's unbelievable the guests that I bring on the show. Today I've got with me Dr. Michael Sagner, who is a practicing physician. Let me look at his bio here. He's a physician specializing in preventive medicine and sports medicine. He is currently chairing the European Society of Preventive Medicine in London, England, not London, Canada. He is the co-editor-in-chief of Progress in Preventive Medicine, a peer-reviewed journal, which I'm honored to be a member of the editorial board. Welcome, Michael. How are you doing?
Thanks, yeah.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Michael and I have spoken many, many times via email and on Twitter, but this is the first time that we're meeting. He'll be back in a month.
True.
At a mini health summit that I'm holding at the John Molson School of Business. It'll be myself, Michael, and Robert Lustig, who's also been on the show, who is a pediatric endocrinologist. So we'll be talking about health from an evolutionary perspective. So that should be super fun. What I thought we would do today is, discuss a whole bunch of things. But before we came on the show, Michael was telling me about his personal trajectory, how he started off wanting to be a soldier, and then how he eventually became a sports medicine physician. So maybe we could start with that story because it's an amazing one.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's amazing now. I was raised by a single mom, and the usual story: struggling, gotta get a job. You feel sort of inferior to other people, and maybe that triggered the urge in me that the military might be, or anything that has to do with where you can be very masculine could be something that might be interesting. I applied, and I wanted to do the special forces thing, of course, very tough, and went through the health assessments, started basic training, and then at some point said, no, I can't take it. I can't take the idea, the fact that people are screaming at me 24/7, actually, which was basically looking back, my inability to cope with hierarchy,
right,
which then became another problem at university a bit later.
Right. So that's exactly what I wanted to talk about, because then when you went to university and got a position, that same irreverence to hierarchy and to authority is what led you to eventually leave academia.
Absolutely. So I was always interested in human performance in sports medicine, with the military, not background, but idea. I became a medical doctor. Sports medicine was always my thing, and very quickly I realized that in sports medicine you only reach a very small percentage of the population, and it might be more interesting to look at applications that are more interesting, more usable in a larger population. So you could use some of the techniques we use in sports medicine, not just the surgical side, but also internal medicine, nutrition, and so on, sleep, metabolism, our understanding of the metabolism, to help other people. And I became head of Department for Preventive Medicine, and I was pretty young at the time, way too young. I don't know if you're ever old enough to do that. But I wasn't prepared for the backstabbing and the bureaucracy, and I thought it would be fun and just, being a clinician.
Academia as a political game? Who would have thought?
I had no idea. And I started, my first job literally was to order pens and stationery for the department. And that took about 20 forms. So I said, yeah, I'm gonna try this for a while, and had some good ideas, and very quickly got a lot of media attention, which the older guys didn't like, of course. So as you know,
yes, because if I may interrupt, because if you're an academic and you're also popular among people in general, then you must be a sellout. And I usually call that the garage band effect, right? So if you're a garage band that only plays to your mother and your girlfriend, then you're a serious artist. You're a struggling artist. But once you play at Wembley Stadium, then you're a sellout.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Very great example. And exactly that thing happened to me. It went so far that, GQ came. GQ ran a couple of stories on me, major television shows, and the university at some point said, you can't even be a doctor. You're not a proper doctor. You're not this and that. And I got my good share of harassment and bullying. People keyed my car, and wasn't fun, but that didn't. It was very disappointing, but it was at the end of the day, it was the bureaucracy and just the BS you have to put up with just to do your job and do something good. I mean, how difficult it is just doing your job in this kind of environment. And at some point, I just said, honestly, at some point, I was just screaming at my superiors, not even talking. I was just screaming at people and said, I can't take it anymore. And at some point, I just said, I'm gonna end this shit show.
Right. Actually, just yesterday, I think, or maybe very early this morning, I received an email from one of my graduate students whom I'm supervising. He received clearance to run the study that I'm supervising for his thesis. And then the IRB, the Institutional Review Board, the Ethics Board, listed a bunch of things that he has to still clear before he gets the clearance to actually do the study. And I was simply amazed at, now this is something that I've railed against for a while. In the old days in psychology, you could do anything to people under the guise of pursuing science to the point of harming them.
Yeah.
Okay, so that was bad. But then now we've swung the fulcrum to the other side, where asking someone a question about their income or their biological sex is too traumatizing, right? And so in his case, what he's doing, one of the things that we're studying is how does being exposed to primes of pathogens, right? If you're exposed to pathogenic primes, you see something like a disease or something on his skin or something, how that might affect certain downstream decision-making phenomena. And so one of the things that they worried about was the fact that this could be so traumatizing. Will we have, a trained professional available in case someone is so traumatized by this image that they need additional help? Now, that is so infantilizing, right? Because, think about what that says about the human condition, right? That seeing a prime of a disease could be so harmful that we need a battery of options to help people.
Yeah, very interesting point. I think we can argue how far we can take this, but what we see also in elite athletes, and I just spent some time with Navy SEALs, how soft we have gotten as a society, as human beings.
Right.
So our grandparents were able to endure things that we can't even imagine, and for us, every single thing is uncomfortable. When it gets uncomfortable, no, I don't this and that, and it gets in your field, psychology. Everything is traumatizing now.
Everything's traumatizing, and what's amazing is that
even this is traumatizing.
This is traumatizing. your toxic masculinity is traumatizing me, Michael. But here's the thing. I come, for many of our fans know this already, but I come from Lebanon, where we escaped imminent death. And we faced death, every second of the day while we were during the very brutal Civil War. So imagine from my perspective, as someone who has truly experienced stuff that most people will never experience, how offensive I find it that people could consider every little thing in their privileged societies now to be so difficult, right? Because it attacks true trauma, right? I escaped, and I don't view myself as a victim. Yes, there was a period in my childhood that I faced some very serious things, but I've overcome them now. I'm thankful to be in Canada, and life goes on. So stop infantilizing people.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
And you making a good point. This goes even further. Everything is not just traumatizing, but everybody's offended all the time now.
Yeah. Right.
So you can't even have a proper discussion about almost anything that's remotely controversial.
But speaking of that, I often use satire and sarcasm in some of my...
Really?
And a few months ago, actually, I've had this string of tweets where I'm talking about, I find it offensive when my physician tells me that I should lose weight because weight is just a social construction.
It wasn't me. Huh?
It wasn't you. And the funny thing is that, and he's a good guy, and I respect him, but he wasn't even aware that I was being satirical. So when I went to see him at his office for my yearly checkup, he brought up those tweets and said, he was almost concerned about my mental health, thinking that I was actually being honest and stating. So this is how crazy the world's become. You can't tell what is satire and what is real. Classic Poe's law.
Incredible. But interesting that your physician checks your tweets.
I guess he's a fan. So now you work in a private clinic, and you were saying that you've got some of the truly top athletes that come to you. Tell us about that.
Yeah, we run a private clinic, and we have the privilege to be working with some of the world's top athletes in different sports, and that's quite interesting because it's not just being a clinician. These people are truly interesting, at least most of them, interesting individuals. It takes a lot of discipline, a lot of sacrifice to get to that point in any sport. So I find that very interesting also from a psychological point of view. And we sometimes we travel a lot because we travel with our patients. And it was everything from Formula One to boxing, tennis, wild mix.
Are there some things that they come and see you about that would be surprising from an elite athlete perspective? So let me give you an example to situate what I mean. So you often think of people stigmatize mental health issues, right? It's okay if you have pneumonia. Somehow that's okay. But if you have a mental health challenge that is in the most important organ in your body, which is your brain, which defines your personhood, that's a bad thing. So an elite athlete who suffers from anxiety, that's strange. What do you mean? You're supposed to be you're the top of the top. So do you ever experience these types of realities where most people would not associate that a top athlete would suffer from this?
It's interesting. I didn't tell him that before, but it's actually one of the main issues we're dealing with. Not just that, we can actually see in each sport you have different issues. This type of stress you're exposed to, media attention, and so on. But anxiety is something that I would say, almost all of our patients and all elite athletes. We also treat a lot of actresses, actors, and VIP celebrities, and they are very good at
masking it,
putting on a show. And for us, it sometimes takes a while to get through those layers and really get to the human being. And very often they just break down. They say, nobody ever listens to me, just about performing, putting on a show. And anxiety is a huge issue, And of course, you can, and we saw, that the opioid crisis, we have a Xanax crisis, so people are overusing drugs to treat that. It's at the end of the day, it's not a solution. It's, of course, short term, it can be very helpful, but it's psychological.
Right. So is it cognitive behavior therapy that ultimately is
exactly something like that? But it can be even simpler than that. And that goes back to what I just said. I spent some time with elite soldiers, Navy SEALs. And they wouldn't think about taking Xanax to get through butts, basic underwater demolition training. No, you just have to find a way, if you want to make it through this hellish time, to cope with it. Right. You find mechanisms. And this may be related to what you've seen in Lebanon. Being able to live in an environment like that, with all the war, the ugly things that you have to you have to see and to struggle with. It teaches you to focus on the really, really important things in life. And very often, of course, we get lost nowadays in modern society. 10,000 things you could be doing right now. The inbox is full. You have some tweets to do. But and maybe your car is not big enough, you could buy another boat, 1,000 things. But at the end of the day, happiness, and also relates to that, not being anxious is about really, really appreciating, and not just cliche-wise, but really, really internalizing the fact that it's the simple things that count.
Right. That's interesting because the gentleman who's going to be joining us in the mini health summit in a month, Robert Lustig, in his latest book, he talks about the two neural systems that deal either with short-term pleasure seeking, the dopamine system, versus what you're talking about, sort of the contentment, which is enjoying the simple things, sort of stepping back and enjoying those things, and that's the serotonin system. So when you're dealing with your elite athletes, who most people would think they've got it all, they shouldn't be suffering from anxiety, in most instances, is it through therapy that you ultimately get them to sort of bring that down, or is it both with pharmacological interventions, or how does it work?
Mix of things.
It's a mix of things.
These people travel a lot, so sometimes it's difficult to change their lifestyles. They don't have a very stable environment. As you know, once you become famous, you're famous now.
Which, by the way, has caused me anxiety.
Yeah, yes, I see.
And I'm willing to say it now in front of people.
Yeah.
I've never felt anxious. I've always been. I mean, yes, I respond to stress, so on, but the fact that now I'm always recognized and so on, people think that, oh, that could only be a good thing. It's people now recognize you. People come up to take selfies with you. People come to. No, it actually works the opposite, because you feel like you always are on. You can't sit somewhere with your children where someone doesn't come up. Yeah. So I can appreciate that level of anxiety. Yeah.
So and it can be a level of anxiety that is almost impossible to live a normal life.
Right.
Many of these elite athletes, they don't go out.
They can't go out. Yeah.
They car, home, hotel. They don't go out. They don't want to spend time in public. And if they spend time in public, it's a nightmare.
Wow. So tell me about, you have a term, I think, cell to community medicine.
Yeah.
Well, tell us about that. That's very interesting.
Well, we published a paper. It goes back to my days when I was head of department. The term preventive medicine is actually something that stems from the public health community. So people looking at large numbers of people, population health basically, and then trying to tweak the statistics a little bit, reducing sodium intake by 0.3%, and then projecting that, and then maybe we reduce hypertension in 10 years, or maybe not. And we've seen that it wasn't very successful with all the big killers we have now that public health should have addressed. It's still trying to address obesity, type 2 diabetes, cardiovascular diseases and cancer, and also neurodegenerative diseases. And as a clinician, looking, and I was working with the European Union, WHO, World Health Organization, and looking, they always gave us these 300-page documents, guidelines, latest science, and most doctors don't even know that these guidelines exist, and for good reason. So you read through the whole thing, and as a clinician, you're looking for solutions, application. Nothing in there,
right?
Just theory. And I said, so how do we actually prevent a disease in somebody that's sitting in front of us? Nothing in there. It's just generalizing, changing the food supply chain or something like that. This also goes with industry. Public health used to attack industry a lot. They still do that. It's big tobacco, big food, big this, big pharma, and so on. But at the end of the day, we all consume those products. If you go to a supermarket, you're going to buy products from a company. So the public health was always against talking with the actual players,
right,
who know in the trenches, who know what people are going to buy, how they function, how they think.
Consumer psychology.
Yes, exactly. Why they make certain decisions. So public health didn't look at that for a very long time. Now they're trying to implement that. But I said this is not useful. And overall, there basically is no real healthcare system. All health, what we call healthcare systems, are basically disease management systems.
After you're diseased, it kicks in.
You're basically not interesting to a doctor if you're not sick.
Right.
Have a proper disease and then come see me.
Don't waste my time trying to avoid a disease.
Exactly.
Get cancer, then come and see me. Okay.
And then you get a team of 15 people. It's going to be very expensive. Your quality of life goes down, and so on and so on. So very absurd.
Right.
And we can talk about that a bit later, because it has some... we're advancing that field quite a bit at the moment. And I said, then we need an approach that actually looks at health and how to prevent diseases and maybe even predict dysfunctions in the future. And in order to connect the clinical side to the public health side, which we had to do sort of with this huge gap, we've written a paper with some top people, which is called From Cell to Community. Which means we look at the smallest entity in your body, try to keep that healthy, and take that to your family, but also to the community.
Right.
So health across the whole, what we call lifespan, or the whole spectrum.
Very interesting.
And that at the time was something that many people didn't do.
Very nice. Let's move on to a topic that's dear to my heart. I hope not literally to my heart, but nutrition.
Yeah.
You're also. I mean, you're a nutritionist?
Yeah.
As part of you being
Yeah.
a preventive medicine guy. Literally, I could turn on the television every single day, and I could hear within the same day that eggs are good for you, eggs are bad for you. Coffee's good for you, coffee's bad for you. Yeah. How should people, as someone who studies consumer behavior, how should people consume the endless conflicting information that we receive about nutrition?
Not at all.
Ignore it.
Yes.
Okay,
go back to asking your grandma.
Go back to asking my grandma knows.
And even your grandma's grandma. She would have a better idea of what good nutrition is than any.
You know, it's interesting you say this because my mother has always said she's a great cook, and she never uses canned foods. She never used processed foods. Well, now we know, and certainly Robert Lustig, who's going to be joining us. I mean, he's a big activist against all the processed stuff. Yeah. Well, my mother didn't have to be a fancy physician from University of California, San Francisco to implement that very healthy choice. Yeah.
That is a very interesting topic to talk about, and also we can observe some of the screw ups big screw ups in medicine. Nutrition. The way we conducted studies in nutrition was that we looked at we took 100,000 people, 50,000 people, whatever, gave them questionnaires, and then you fill them out. Yeah, you say, do you remember what you had for breakfast last Monday?
The only reason I do is because I have the exact same thing which is coffee and a couple of eggs.
Okay, and I know you keep a pretty strict diet.
Very strict. And in this room, although she's not within the camera, is my official, my chef, also known as my wife.
Yes, and she does a very good job. So you might be an exception. You actually know what you're eating. But remember. Try to remember what you had for whatever 2 weeks ago, and you change the things you eat all the time, and you don't have an amazing wife like you do.
Thank you. So that means what you're basically saying is the data is garbage. Okay.
And in science, we say garbage in, garbage out. And this is basically what then happened is because nutrition is a central element to human health. The way we live has a strong psychological component. And the media immediately takes all that stuff, puts it out there, and there we go.
It's off, yeah.
So chocolate causes cancer. Next day, it prevents cancer.
Right. So of all the different diets, there's keto diet, paleo diet, this diet, that. Is the one that has received the most amount of empirical support the Mediterranean diet, which is basically grandma's eat everything in moderation, not too much saturated. I mean, is that a fair thing?
Yeah, at the moment, looking at all the data, is probably the most reasonable diet that you could follow.
You could follow. Okay. Yeah. What do you think of the whole vegan issue? And let me, before you answer, I joke, but I'm almost being accurate that it is scarier to get the vegan rage brigade to come after you than to get Islamists. I think I was less afraid of the Islamists than I was, because I did a couple of clips on my SAAD TRUTH show. The first one was basically saying, look, here's the evolutionary evidence from archaeology, from parasitology, from medicine, from mating behavior, from endless fields that shows that, look, eating animal sources has been an indelible part of our evolutionary history. So notwithstanding the fact that I'm a huge animal lover and I really care about animal welfare, I was arguing that it is perhaps implausible to expect that all humans will become vegan. That's the only point I was making. The amount of hate that I received was extraordinary. So you, as a physician specializing in all these issues, should we all go vegan, doctor?
You should.
Okay, all right.
No, very, very interesting point. It's true. So you have all these different diets, and something that you will appreciate. If you look at these diets, that is usually, so we had lactose-free, right? We had gluten-free, sugar-free, fat-free. So in order to produce something that's fat-free, sugar-free, that's normally not sugar-free or gluten-free, You need to process it. Now, most of these people who are gluten-free, lactose-free, against big food, big pharma, and so on. But at the same time, you're sort of following that trend, right? Mm. You're actually supporting it. And that is one of the smartest things that these big companies have done. Just fooling these people into actually being clients and buying their stuff. And at the same time, believing that they're doing something healthy and they're completely disconnected from industry. In order to make something lactose-free and gluten-free, it takes a bit of processing. And usually these products are more expensive than the regular products. But getting back to your question, it's very true that in these camps, in these different groups, you have a lot of, they're almost like militias. A good friend of mine, Mark Baker, who's also a friend of Nassim, he's
Nassim Taleb, for those of you who don't know.
Yes. He always says it's almost like a militia on both sides. The vegan people on one side and the meat eaters on the other side. Yeah. People who
it's tribal, it's ideological.
Absolutely. And it's just that. There's no science to back it up. It really is. It's actually something you should talk about.
Right. Yeah. So again, going to grandma's edict, all things in good moderation. Don't eat steak 7 times a week, but eating animal food sources is something that we've evolved to expect as part of a healthy diet. No?
Absolutely. Okay. There's no denying that. Evolutionary biology is very clear. Right. We've been eating meat forever, basically.
Right.
But the amount of meat, just going back to your grandma,
right.
And if your grandma's still alive, ask her, how many times did you have meat per week? And usually it was once or twice.
Simply because you couldn't afford to have it more. And so in a sense, that regulated how, whereas now to the extent that we no longer live with environments of scarcity, exactly. which kind of is a nice segue to what we're going to be talking about in a month at the one of the fundamental insights from evolutionary medicine is this idea of the mismatch hypothesis, which is, you may know it, but some of our followers might not, so let me just describe it. So the environments in which we've evolved that would have led to certain adaptive realities, because we've evolved in environments of caloric uncertainty and caloric scarcity, in today's environment of plenty, these things become maladaptive. And then they lead to all of the top chronic health killers that you're talking about, the colon cancer, the heart disease, the diabetes. Are some of these evolutionary ideas increasingly becoming infused within traditional medicine, or is there still a disconnect between traditional medicine and these evolutionary ideas?
Well, they should. It should become... Absolutely. I think in medical school, people should learn about these things.
But they don't.
Not at all. Yeah. They learn about stuff. Sometimes it's very stupid stuff. But that should be one of the cornerstones, especially in public health. If you want to tell people and try... What public health tries to do is also nudge people into doing certain things or not doing certain things. You need to understand their behavior first. And public health was never a big fan of anything, for example, that you do, trying to understand behavior. No, it's the right thing to do.
Right.
Since when
do people do the right thing? Yeah.
It has to be easy, accessible, and so on. Yeah. So no, we for a very long time we didn't even mention it, but now slowly it's becoming more integrated.
Well, I think, and I talk about this in several of my books, I think one of the premises in public health is that if people do the wrong thing, it's because they don't have the necessary information. So educate them and they'll do better. And I give several examples of how that's not true, right? So, for example, women suntan a lot more than men, even though they have a lot more knowledge about the ill effects of sun exposure than do men, yet they still do it more. That already falsifies the idea that the only reason why I do bad choices is because I didn't know any better. And so, and I think we'll talk about this next month when at least I will. So when you're designing a health promotion campaign, let's say for impotence, right? You want to stop young men from smoking. Telling them that in 50 years, here's the epidemiology of heart disease, I don't give a crap because I'm 21 and I'm going to be immortal. But telling them that the only group of guys who will suffer from sexual dysfunction if they're young are the heavy smokers, and then show them a cigarette that's limp,
Yeah, we'll just say, yeah.
that's going to get my attention.
Yeah.
So understanding the Darwinian pulls that actually will shape my behavior is a very practical issue.
Absolutely. Smoking is a good example.
Yeah.
And just going back to what you said in the beginning, just knowing something doesn't mean
You'll act on it.
You act on it.
Yeah.
I mean, that is a very stupid idea.
Right.
Smoking is a good example. There is basically no smoker on the planet who doesn't know
It's bad for you.
it's pretty bad for you. It's still a leading cause, if not the leading cause of
I
death.
saw you today. You tweeted something
Yes.
where you showed
Yeah.
of preventable diseases. It's by far the number one.
Yeah, absolutely. Preventable cancers. So
Yeah.
it's number one. People still do it, right?
Yeah.
And public health still tries to push people into, you have to stop smoking tomorrow. No, better tonight, now. Then we'll give you some patches and we'll leave you alone. People don't smoke just because of
Not knowing any better.
exactly. It's very complex. It's behavior, it's addiction. People associate smoking with, in certain countries like France, it's part of their lifestyle. Food, community, and so on. And just taking away the cigarettes doesn't do anything. By the way, I don't know about Canada, but in Europe and many other countries, you had these very scary images on the packages.
Yes.
Do you have that here?
Yeah.
And,
Go ahead.
And they actually found out that this was they thought it was a genius idea. So people in the ivory towers, this is going to scare them off, and again, get rid of smoking. You know what?
It didn't do anything.
And they actually reversed it now.
I'm going to tell you an amazing story. And if I remember correctly, I do mention this example in one of my books, The Consuming Instinct. So my students, and irrespective of which course I teach, I always have them do a project where they have to identify a research question, posit hypotheses, collect the data, the whole process, the whole research process. And so at one point, one of my undergraduate students was working on a project on, why do people do bad things as consumers that are bad for their health? And so he told me an amazing story about those warning labels. Mm-hmm. So the warning labels come in many types, right? It could be, you'll get heart disease, So what he would do when he would go to the store and ask for cigarettes is if he received a warning signal that could be relevant to him, you will get heart disease, he would return it to them and ask for one. Let's say this will harm your baby if you're pregnant. Now suddenly, by my receiving that one, I'm a man, I can't be pregnant, therefore it doesn't. So even though he was completely cognizant of the fact that he was engaging in astounding ostrich behavior, yet it still was enough for him to psychologically justify to himself that it's okay, it doesn't apply to me, it's only pregnant women. And he was almost laughing about it. So that shows you that it's not just about information.
Very good example. It's amazing. Yeah, it's not just about information. It's really about environment and even the concept of nudge. Rory Sutherland, also one of
who's a friend of Nassim's, also. Yeah,
exactly. Is famous for his nudge approach, nudging people into behavior. And Nassim doesn't like that at all. And
he doesn't like it because the book came out with Richard Thaler, who happens to he's the most recent Nobel Prize winner, who happened to be my former professor at Cornell. So that's maybe why he doesn't like it.
In any case, I don't know why, but he doesn't like it. He doesn't believe in nudging people.
Right.
Rory thinks that that's the only way to do it. Changing the environment in a way that it leads to certain behavior.
What percent? I mean, I don't know if you have an exact number, but give us a sense of these really top killers. What percentage is due to prevent? There is excuse the term, shit happens, randomness, right? You get random cancer. But what percentage is due to absolutely lifestyle choices that we make? Sedentary life, smoking, obesity. What is it?
It's a pretty high number. So it's between there are different studies out there. There's a huge study. Lancet, a big medical journal, publishes data on that once in a while. It's between 60 and 80%.
60 and 80%. Unbelievable. So what is the extent to which a typical person could make change? I mean, if you tell the typical person you have to live a near Dean Ornish life of very minimal, right? Never smoke, that's too much. It's too big. I'm going to die. Who cares? But maybe you've got some hopeful message for us, which for example, if you just engage in 10 minutes of exercise a day, it improves your life expectancy by X. Is that true? Or do you really have to make a massive intervention in your lifestyle for it to have downstream good effects?
Very good question. This is also something that public health, I'm always talking about public health here. I'm not attacking public health, by the way. This is something that we are beginning to understand now, that it's usually very small changes, but you have to pick the ones,
that matter.
Exactly, the effective ones. Small interventions can be, really very impactful.
So lose 15 pounds. You might be 60 pounds overweight. Sure, try to lose all 60. But already if you lose 15 of those 60, there is a big effect on you.
Absolutely. And there's also there's a huge discussion still going on. It's been going on for a while. Whether you can be overweight, but still healthy.
Please tell me yes. Please tell me yes.
You're not overweight.
Oh, love this. I'm bringing this guy to Canada so he can be my personal physician.
I'll do that for free.
Oh, thank you. You're very kind.
The key point probably is physical activity. So there's good data showing that people who are a little bit overweight, but physically very active, have a lower mortality rate than somebody who's
thin smokes and never
does anything.
Yeah.
So some people call that the obesity paradox. Stephen Blair has published about that. Chip Levy, a cardiologist. So there's some good data. Some people don't like the concept because they're so against obesity, but the data is pretty convincing that fitness really matters. This is a key. And
what is the amount? Again, the reason I'm asking these questions is because I want to empower people to feel as though small interventions are already. That doesn't mean you shouldn't go for the big intervention, but so that you could. So let's suppose I'm a sedentary person who doesn't do anything.
Yeah.
What's the kind of small intervention I can do that I could start seeing? 10 minutes, 50, or what is it?
Yeah, just anything. 10 minutes, 15 minutes is okay. It's very difficult to tell whether, more is better up to a certain point with physical activity. Okay. So, of course, 30 minutes a day, like you, an hour daily is perfect. Right. And mixing it up, a little bit of endurance training, resistance training, and making it interesting. So if you have to really force yourself every single day to be physically active,
that's not good.
Not good. So it's not fun. You probably will stop doing that. But just walking, parking your car a bit further away, walking, simple things. But resistance training, strength training really is one of the cornerstones we now know to good health. And this is something that also has changed over the last 200 years. We used to be very active and lifting things and pushing things. Nowadays, what are you pushing? Your sofa or open the coffee door.
Right.
So these kind of interventions. And sometimes physical activity and inactivity is not controversial. Nutrition, a bit more controversial, but the Mediterranean diet is probably your best bet.
Right.
But if you look at things like smoking, very, very controversial. Now, what do you do with somebody who smokes? Tell them to stop smoking, her. Yeah, but it's not that easy because it's not just the nicotine addiction. It's actually, nicotine is not the really dangerous substance in a cigarette. It's the 7,000
other chemicals.
Exactly, that you actually use in order to get the nicotine. But it's not just that. The nicotine, of course, a smoker is addicted to nicotine. But it's also, as I said, the gesture and so many other things. So sometimes it might be a better idea to use a concept called harm reduction. Saying, okay, go to vaping.
Right.
Slowly reduce your harm. Instead of saying go cold turkey tomorrow.
Yeah.
This is something that public health, again, and many people don't want to accept because they want to think in black and white.
Yeah.
It's easier. The world is not black and white.
But it's funny because I've suffered from the black and white thinking when it comes to my weight management, where I want to go from whatever weight I'm at to what I was when I was 23. And the reality is, no, weigh yourself every week. You've gone down 0.7 pounds. Celebrate that. Absolutely. That's good. So but you really have to train your mind to think this way.
Yeah.
And that's why I think this is such a powerful message, because it empowers people to at least digest the bigger problem. If you tell me that, it kind of reminds me of there's something, the inverted U shape when of fear appeal. When you're trying to scare people into doing something, if you don't scare them enough, then they ignore the message. If you scare them so much, then they freeze and they go, who the hell cares?
Yes.
I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
So there's some middle level of fear where you scare me enough that I pay attention, but then give me a solution. So don't worry about losing 50 pounds. lose 5 pounds, and already your blood pressure is going to go down a bit.
Absolutely, that's it, exactly. But this is exactly what we have to embrace. That kind of approach. It's also a very humane approach.
Right.
Really, I'm not. You didn't lose 20 pounds. You're a loser.
Right.
No, you're on the way.
We're
always on the way. And celebrating that, the small steps, and it's really a mindset that you don't always think black and white. I didn't get that. This, I need to get a better car, lose more weight. It's all a gray zone, and light gray is pretty good already.
Right. Of all the parts, I mean, you're one of the things that I love about you, and that's how we sort of, I think, connected originally, is we're both real polymaths. We're all over the place.
Right.
We could talk about politics, we could talk about science, we could talk about behavior. And you wear many hats, and you're a very interdisciplinary guy. Which parts of your professional life do you love the most, and which parts do you like the least?
I think that what I really love doing is seeing patients, helping people.
Okay.
And sometimes that's complicated. I have to travel a lot, see clients, patients. But that's really what, even if it's extremely exhausting, that's what I love. And helping somebody to achieve their goals that's always going to be something that it just...
So you'll always be a clinician?
I hope so,
yeah. Gotcha.
If time allows. The least favorite thing... Well, I would love to publish more. I just don't have the time, as you know. I mean, it's a full-time job just publishing things. Not that I dislike it, but I'm probably not like you, a writing machine.
Right. Maybe the final question, and then I'll ask you if you have anything that you want to promote. Use this forum to do so. Here's maybe the most dangerous disease that I know of, and I've coined it ostrich parasitic syndrome. Right. This is where instead of actual brain pathogens going into your brain and altering your circuitry as it happens with other animals, it's when bad ideas enter your brain. Now, I'm going to take OPS and I'm going to change it to OMS, which is ostrich messy syndrome. Why is it that some people...
I know why this is...
Why is it that some people suffer from the fatal disease of not recognizing the all-time greatness of Lionel Messi? That's the medical question that we have to resolve.
I don't have an answer to that.
That's one of those things that science can't explain.
We can't explain that, sorry.
That's just delusion.
That's delusion.
It's a psychotic break.
It is, yeah. It is.
Sorry, Cristiano Ronaldo fans. This is
Love
the
you
expert
too.
physician telling you that you suffer from a terminal disease of the human mind.
I'll have people burning down my house,
Are there any projects that you're currently working on that you're excited about that you might have not yet advertised that you'd like to use this forum to do so?
Well, we're doing different things. What we're trying to do is within the medical community and being more interdisciplinary. So we have the European Society of Preventive Medicine in London. We are starting another group of people, the society, bringing together scientists like you from really different fields and discussing. Something I miss in academia is like back in the days, we had a psychologist, a biologist, a physician, maybe a vet.
It's enriching to the soul.
Exactly. We have a glass of wine, we sit together, and we just chat. I would like to.
Who would have thought that that's something that we should be striving towards? It should be the default value.
Yeah, but that's something I would really like to organize.
Intellectual salons.
Yes. Very a select group of people, and we share ideas.
Can we organize it in the Turks and Caicos?
Yes.
My wife, she's off camera. She's going, yes. Please.
Yes, that's something we are working on. A couple of other initiatives. We just launched a medical journal trying to provide a platform to scientists and researchers that want to do something with preventive medicine, and that really it really touches psychology and everything is coming together. So, and we didn't really have a journal where you could publish something that's sort of in between.
Right.
So we created a journal. We hope to get our first impact factor very soon. It's always a struggle in the beginning. So if you're a scientist...
Progress in Preventive Medicine. And
submit, please.
And Michael was very kind to offer me the opportunity to publish editorials, and I still haven't taken him upon him. So maybe if I now state it publicly, I will be shamed if I don't do so. I hereby promise to take him up on his offer.
So we're going to tweet about it.
Michael, what a pleasure. Now let's head off to lunch. and have fun and eat.
Yes.
So nice to see you. Cheers, buddy. Thank you.
Thank you.